Okay, here's the third set of sentence combining sentences. And as you have figured out by now, this has a lot to do with a strategy for writing, a strategy for putting together a big complex paper. One of the things about these online sentence combining exercises, they don't have an official start time. So after you finish this, if you want to see the rest of the story, you can just jump ahead to next week, go ahead and do it so you can figure out the whole thing. I put these in because we are at the start of the synthesis and research writing paper, and it's a pretty big complex paper. And I wanted to give you a strategy that might help you for getting all the information put together and organized for that enormous paper. So here we go. People learn in at least three ways, and you know this already. There are the verbal learners who learn things about reading by reading about them, the visual learners who like to look at pictures and things they can see, and the kinesthetic learners who learn best by actually doing things and moving stuff around. In these sentence combining exercises, we've been pushing the kinesthetic part. I've been pushing you to actually get out pencil and paper or pen and paper and write the thing. So this is familiar territory, and that's what this whole arranging of file cards business will help you with. So here comes the first set. Many pre-writing approaches help you get organized. One is interesting. All of them into A. There are many pre-writing approaches that help you to get organized, but one is especially interesting. B, there are many pre-writing approaches that help you to get organized. However, one method is especially interesting. And I want to stop for a moment. Semicolon, however, comma. That's a really common way to join two, two independent clauses together. You remember fanboys. There are only 7 of the coordinating conjunctions. This however thing, this is a conjunctive adverb, and that is not a closed list. It's got a lot of members. So that's yet one more way to join two independent clauses. Independent clause, semicolon, however, comma, and off we go again. And then we've got one of those although phrases. You notice again there's no comma after my although, but there is a comma after the whole introductory thing. Although there are many pre-writing approaches that help you get organized, comma, one method is especially interesting. Yes, that comma does not go after although, but it goes after the whole clause. All three of these preserve that wordy, clunky there are and an extra that. I'd cut words out. If I was just writing it for myself, this is what I would write. Although many pre-writing approaches can help you get organized, one is especially interesting. I have to say a word about a thing called a dummy subject. English is very, very strongly a subject-verb-object language, so strongly that we absolutely demand a subject in every formal sentence, even if there's no really good reason to have it. For example, there are many ways to skin a cat. The dummy subject, there are. It is better to suffer than to complain. Though lots of empty function words in dummy subject sentences. Do it frequently, you lose everybody. Here's a general rule. The more function words you have, uh, the the more your reader just tends to zone out on you. And that's one of the reasons, remember all the way back to Ron and Hermione and all those simple sentences, that string of simple sentences needed a lot of function words, and that's why it was so much better when we combined things. So we've got to do that for the sake of the grammar, but you can always revise that dummy subject out, and often your result is much fresher. There are many ways to skin a cat. Let's revise it out. Cats can be skinned in many ways. Same stuff, but suddenly it feels very fresh. Or you can skin cats in many ways. That sounds like something nobody's ever said before. It is better to suffer than to complain. You can revise that too. Suffering in silence is better than complaining. Or to rethink the whole idea, complaining causes more trouble than suffering. Here comes the second set. Fairly simple and straightforward. We got 3x5 cards, a simple logical approach. The simple and logical approach uses 3x5 cards. I didn't put a comma between simple and logical because the original textbook thing didn't have a comma there. Um, Once again, I probably would have said simple comma logical approach. And another one of those absolute phrases, simple and logical comma. This approach uses 3x5 cards. And an ing phrase using 3x5 cards, comma. The approach is simple and logical. Yes, if you wrote that first one with a comma, that's just fine. That's probably the way I would have done it. But the comma wasn't in the pattern. Yes, it's a very common error to leave those introductory subordinate clause commas off. A very common error, but it is an error. Uh, by the way, notice these are, as spoken sentences, these are pretty terrible. You wouldn't say this to a friend at lunch, but they're pretty good as written sentences. Third set. A topic is selected. You jot down various points. A single point is put on each card. A topic is selected, semicolon. Then you jot down various points, putting a single point on each card. And I've got my ing phrase at the end this time. With the topic selected, comma, you jot down various points, semicolon again. A single point is put on each card. We did this one without a semicolon. After selecting a topic, you jot down various points, but put only a single point on each card. A word about passive voice. I had a writing teacher who said that passive voice was never the preferred thing. We shouldn't ever use it. And one of my classmates said, well, so if it's such a poor idea, why does it exist in the English language? Well, the answer is that sometimes it's very necessary. Many of you are business majors, and if you want to soften something, you use passive voice. The memo that goes out and says the filing system got really messed up this week, got totally messed up this week. That's likely to be much more gentle on the ears of the person who messed it up. If you send out a memo that says Hermione messed up the filing system this week, she might quit. And you might not be interested in getting rid of her. You might be more interested in just commenting about the filing system. Scientific writing usually does not worry too much about who did stuff. Here's the recipe or part of the recipe for polyjuice potion. And it doesn't matter who does stuff. A gram of boomslang skin and a pinch of lacewing flies were then added to the potion. But what we're doing here in this set of sentences is instructions to the reader, and it's fairly informal. So I'm going to stick with active voice as much as possible. We got informal language like jot, so I'm going to go with active voice as much as I can. Fourth set. The cards are the raw material. A working outline emerges from them. These cards are the raw material, comma, and a working outline emerges from them. These cards are the raw material from which a working outline emerges. Um, the whole which thing, that causes trouble if you're not used to it. From the raw material of these cards, a working outline emerges. We've got several choices for putting together independent clauses. We got the semicolon or comma plus and. They work, but they don't say much about the content. Not much of an improvement uh, over the ungrammatical comma splice. Sentences B and C, and I'm going to back up here. B and C do define the relationship between the two ideas and give us some idea about the chronology. So here I'm backing up. So yes, from which a working outline emerges. It sounds like the working outline is after the raw material. And C, pretty much the same thing again. A just says one thing and another thing. Doesn't say as much about chronology. Okay, we've done a lot of attention, or given a lot of attention to subordinate structures. At the beginning of the sentence, subordinate clause in red here, because he was the teacher's pet, comma, Maxwell Bratt was not well liked. At the end of the sentence, he always scored at the top of the class when tests would be given. Not normally a comma when the subordinate clause is at the back side of the sentence. Or in the middle of the sentence, Maxwell Bratt, comma, the teacher's pet, comma, was not well liked. The comma plus coordinating conjunctions. You remember the 7 magic words, fanboys, comma, and. Teacher would ask questions, comma, and Maxwell always had the answers. I like to hunt deer, comma, but my father likes to fish. Here are a couple more possibilities. The semicolon. It's not a very commonly used thing, and it should get more. It should have more action, I think. A topic is selected, semicolon. Then you jot down the various points, putting a single point. And as I said a few minutes ago, the conjunctive adverb. Oh, that's a big word. Anyway, the conjunctive adverb. Uh, Many pre-writing approaches that help you to get organized. Semicolon, however, comma. And there are a lot of words in that conjunctive adverb category. Nevertheless, furthermore, just a lot of those. Here's the semicolon rule. That's it. That's all there is to the rule. 2 independent clauses. Both of them have to be structurally possible as independent sentences. Ron and Hermione are in love. That's structurally possible as an independent sentence. They plan on getting married. Structurally possible as an independent sentence. So I joined them with a semicolon because they are related ideas. That's not really part of the grammatical rule. It's part of the logical rule. Don't join things together unless they belong together. The colon rule. A lot of people hit the semicolon when they really want a colon. The colon, the rules are a little less strict. The stuff on one side or the other of the colon has to be an independent clause, but they don't both have to be. So usually a colon, what it says is, here comes an explanation for something I just said. Example, they have been through many adventures together, colon. What do you mean by that? Here's a list. Learning to fly, fighting evil wizards, and hiding out from Voldemort. That's not a clause at all. It's just a list. Here's another one with a list of very short items. Hermione loved the house elves, colon. Which house elves are we talking about? Dobby, Winky, and Creature. Things can get complicated. We can put all sorts of stuff together in a sentence. So, my goodness, we've got a topic is selected, independent clause, semicolon, then you put down various points, comma, and then at the back side, one of those ing phrase things. putting a single point in each card. So this has been a look at some fairly complex stuff, and if you'd like to see the rest of the putting together or organizing the paper thing, just go ahead and do next week's sentence combining exercise. You'll get the end of the story.